You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, when all hope is lost. Start a podcast. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This time we are talking about Identity Crisis. It had a story from Timothy DeHaas, a teleplay by Brannon Braga. It was directed by Winrich Kolbe and first aired the week of March 25th, 1991. James, what is this one all about?
Geordi's former colleague, Lieutenant Commander Susanna Leijten, comes on board. She's worried that all of their former colleagues from a mission to Tarchannen III have deserted Starfleet and disappeared. She begins to act increasingly strange and wants to go down to the planet's surface before she begins to transform into a strange alien creature. Dr. Crusher investigates the medical possibilities while Geordi goes over old logs searching for a clue. It turns out aliens plant their DNA to passers-by in order to reproduce, which seems challenging when you think about it. Crusher discovers a way to reverse the process, but will it be too late for Geordi?
No. Well, Alex, you'd never seen this episode before. What did you think of it?
I mean, it's a cliche to say fine, isn't it? But I mean, it's all right. Let's go with something else. Competent. It's not the first mystery we've seen, and it's not the most engaging mystery we've seen, but it rumbles along nicely enough. I don't necessarily know from the outset exactly where it's going. In fact, I'd say it goes quite a long time without being entirely clear. But I would say that generally, as a rule of thumb, you can gauge, for me, how good an episode is by how much I'm not getting distracted by other things. So, having a character that has a name like a sandwich maker, or the shadows on the wall with people holding tricorders that make it look like they've got their knob hanging out, or even just something like Geordi going, now wait a minute, I know Paul Hickman, he's a family man, he's got 2 kids, he wouldn't steal a shuttle and dessert. And I think, no, he wouldn't nick a dessert, that's outrageous. You know, just if my mind's wandering to such crap jokes, I don't know, is it damning of the episode or my mind?
You had to excitedly come on Twitter and show us the shadows on the wall.
Unfortunate choice of phrase.
It's probably going to be a difficult episode to talk about because I think everything is fine. What this is an episode of a television show, as they used to be. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't really. It's not really memorable, but it's entertaining while it's on. It kind of passes the time. And I think after 2 episodes which have been both problematic and just not very good, just to have a solid episode, yeah, that's fine. It's a sort of decent enough mystery. It has a beginning, a middle and an end. You know, this is all damning with faint praise, but there is nothing in particular that makes this episode stand out.
Hey, in an earlier series, it may have been one of the better episodes of the series. We've just moved a bit beyond that now. I mean, if you just boil it down to a constituent element, you say Geordi LaForge is trapped in a Star Trek version of Final Destination. It sounds slightly more exciting than it is.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
I kind of struggle to say what's wrong in many respects.
It's boring. That's what's wrong.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be, though. That's the thing. That's the weird thing.
I think it's the pacing.
Yeah. There should be that constant sense of dread. The inevitability of Geordi is going to come down with this.
I think there's a number of things. And we talked about this with Night Terror as well. Because this could be a body horror kind of thing. And it probably should be a bit more. But I'm not sure they really play that up. the whole thing, the episode is called Identity Crisis, and actually you don't get that battle between the two identities really. You get a little bit of it right at the end, but it's sort of...
I mean, you could probably have done something with this, not dissimilar to what, say, the middle act of Prometheus does. That idea of an insidious alien that's infected someone and is starting to change their personality, not necessarily in an immediately obvious way, but that creeping sense of dread.
Or even The Fly, where where the good guy becomes the bad guy and starts doing horrible things, maybe, or just even before they know it's physically happening, the behaviour changing and the person they knew no longer quite being there. But they don't really do any of that.
What we needed was Geordi in 10 forwards putting loads of sugar in his tea.
Something. But because I think this is a problem with LaForge as well. So, early on, you've got the scene with him sitting with Leijten, his former colleague, and you think, oh, Geordi sitting in the holodeck talking to a woman, I've seen this before, I don't like it, it's not going to go well. And, they don't go down any kind of creepy route, so bonus points there.
Especially that he starts being questioned and goes, oh, well, no, I enjoy the bachelor's life too much. You think it's only, 2 episodes now? 3 episodes since you were caught in your wank fantasy.
Well, maybe he's had time to reflect on that.
That's what all the lonely men say. I'm really enjoying my bachelor life at the moment, it's brilliant.
You're right, though, and I think kind of that plays into it a little bit. Geordi is not the most interesting character to do this with.
No, absolutely. The big problem is that this is Geordi, who is a completely inert character at the best of times. So you never really get a lot of emotional depth, I don't think, in a Geordi episode. It just... You never feel anything, and so that's a problem. And I also think the procedural element is a problem, because we have this quite cool concept, I think, of looking over the tapes initially, which, I think we see too many times. I love...
It goes a bit Blade Runner, doesn't it?
I mean, incidentally, I do love all that. I love that, they've brought out the old phasers and the old uniforms. That's cool. Good detail. And then the idea of you rewatching the past on the holodeck. I like that. And then Geordi seeing something that's not quite right. But that whole procedural aspect doesn't go anywhere, because he finds it and he doesn't get to tell anyone about it. So it's kind of just nothing and meaningless. And I get that it sort of builds on, there was something in the woods, that there was another creature there. It's building that kind of tension. But the investigation that Crusher's doing completely separately and going, there's this alien DNA in her body and it's reproducing and rewriting her DNA. But I've worked out a way to fix that. It's fine. It's completely separate. And so it doesn't feel like any of the investigation side of it actually has much depth or consequence, because it's all kind of done pretty quickly.
He just works out that there's something there, and once he sees it, suddenly he transforms, just within seconds.
Yeah, it is that TV disease thing, where they go, well, this person, it took weeks for them to change, but it could literally be a minute for you, Geordi, we just don't know.
I think there's also an element of the problem is that Leijten, I think whenever you have this kind of guest character come in that's supposed to be, a figure from this person's past, but we don't know them, it's very difficult to have the kind of investment that a story like this is really asking you to have. I think you'd have a very different effect if I don't know, you were saying that this was a Troy and Riker led story, and it's something about the two of them, a mission that the two of them had previously been on from previous command, and then being able to play with the idea of one of them becoming infected, perhaps before the other one realised it. That sort of thing. It's just, you don't really care until it reaches Geordi. That's the problem. And by that point, it's a little late.
I think she's actually fine, as a character.
She's fine. She's just difficult to invest in to the requisite level, I think.
And I guess the thing I do kind of like is the episode starts right away. There's no sort of teasery nothingness or just some kind of fun little segment at the start of the episode. It's her in the observation lounge giving a briefing, and it's right into that. And I don't actually think the pacing is bad in this episode. I just think it's just lacking a little bit of something to make it stand out. I think competent is so the word. It's got a structure. It absolutely does. It doesn't have any flair.
It's workmanlike.
And I guess the whole thing with the other guy who's gone missing. What's his name supposed to be? I don't.
Breville. Was it Breville?
Breville?
He's the only one I remember because his name sounds like a toaster.
That's fine.
Or is it Breville? I don't know. I'm calling him Breville. It's just funnier.
Okay, so Breville has stolen the shuttle, and the whole thing is, we're pursuing this shuttle. This family man, where's he gone? What's happening? And you can't invest in a shuttle on a monitor
just because you've been told he's a family man. He's got 2 kids, and he wouldn't nick a shuttle and dessert.
I mean, that's all you need to know, isn't it? So,
and then the shuttle explodes, and Data says he's toast.
Boom! Instantly, season classic.
That you're not invested in at all, and so that element of it is just a bit nothing. She's fine, and again, because Geordi's not really emoting that much about, this is my colleague and we have such a history together. When she turns into a sort of scaly alien, it's just sort of like, I've got to do more investigations. And instead of them saying, okay, well, make sure you work with someone at all times because, like, really, this could happen and it could be bad. They go, just off you go on your own.
It's bizarre, actually, that doesn't up the stakes more. You're right. It does in the sense of Geordi is next, but it does sort of carry on. It doesn't peak from there. It sort of plateaus. It carries on at the same pace.
Yes, because obviously it's inevitable. Geordi is going to change. The moment, I guess the one moment where it's almost interesting is when Dr. Crusher says, "Tell me if you have any symptoms," and then you see him having a symptom and he doesn't tell her, and you think, well, why?
It'd be a bit like watching the film Seven, and when there's only 2 sins left, 2 sin murders to be left, that Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman just have another one of those scenes having a long lunch.
Yeah, so by that point you're like, he's going to turn into an alien, and then he finds the clue on the holodeck, and he's gone. Commander LaForge is no longer on the ship.
Brief flash of an alien. Such a brief flash that you almost wonder, why bother? It's almost as if someone went, The Exorcist, the way that it flashes to the demon, let's do that. That's gonna be cool. Whereas instead I think you just watch it and go, what? Was that it? Okay, right, fine.
I guess the flair for this episode was the whole blacklight alien, the alien that only shows up under a UV torch, So because
they could have done with that back in The Naked Now.
Oh no. So yeah, they've brought out the ultraviolet paints, so they can do something cool. But I feel like these weren't really designed to be seen in HD.
No, I mean the set for that planet is actually quite nice compared to some of the ones we've had previously. It's it's relatively believable. I like the way it lines up with matte painting. But yeah, you're right. In HD on Blu-ray, it's undeniably a studio with a few trees in.
But I'm not that fussed about that.
No, it's fine. I think we maybe have been more critical in an earlier season, but actually here it feels like they're doing an adequate enough job within the confines that they had at the time, to be perfectly honest.
I think why we're talking about it is we're really scraping around for things to say.
Well, what would have really enhanced the alien would be if they kept the visor.
Yes, I mean, but wouldn't that have been interesting though? Actually, just as a thing, as part of Geordi's transformation, suddenly, I guess it's the moment from Star Trek Insurrection. He suddenly has pain in his eyes, and suddenly he has these new yellow eyes. Is that not a moment, a beat that you can play?
Or even someone doesn't realise he's infected and then realises he's not wearing the visor. Yeah. It's his one defining trait, goddammit. Why wouldn't you seize upon it?
One of his two defining traits. He's also a sex pest.
Yes, fair enough. It makes when he's leaning over after she's passed out kind of creepy in a way, doesn't it?
What do you think of the whole the Leijten arc? I guess she has one as well. She comes on board. She basically is worried about her former crewmates, and then she wants to stay on the planet, but something's going wrong with her. Then she transforms, and then she gets all scaly, and then Dr. Crusher does some tests and goes, "Oh, it's this."
Is that an arc?
It's not, but and she ultimately recovers.
That's as much of an arc as Donald Trump gets coronavirus, gets very sick, doesn't have pneumonia, but has an infection of the lung, which is incidentally pneumonia. And then at the end of it, has he learnt his lesson? No, he's still a raging arsehole. It's not an arc, it's just a continuation.
But she is then the one to recognise Geordi, and then to say, "Geordi, you're still in there. You need to come back to the ship." And is it almost like, well, do you not want one of the regular crew to be the person who's saying that? Do you not want someone who we know, who has a established relationship? Or is it that they've realised, well, Geordi doesn't actually have any relationships apart from his sort of funny bromance thing with Data, and we can't really have Data doing this because he's not got that kind of emotional bond?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely the problem. That's why I was saying it would work better with a different pairing. I guess Geordi sometimes tends to get these kind of stories. I mean, it's him or Riker, really, maybe Data. But yeah, the only person you can pair him with, really, for that kind of relationship is Data. And it's requiring a level of emotionality that Data does not provide.
I did quite like the sort of Data, I wouldn't even call it plot point, but the Data stuff in this where, they're saying, "Oh, you are actually worried. We know you're worried. We know you actually experience emotions, don't you? Even though you're just a machine, but you love Geordi, don't you?" That's nice enough. I mean, you could blink and miss it.
There's been remarkably little Data for quite a few episodes now, I feel.
Then Data said, "No, it's Picard who I love."
It's Picard, because we are like Kirk and Spock.
They kind of remake this episode in Voyager, don't they? The episode Threshold is basically this.
I was going to say the episode where the dead girl comes back, who was Harry Kim's friend. Do you remember that? And they reproduce by taking the corpses of other people and then imprinting their DNA on them.
I was just thinking Threshold because there's that transformation and they go down to the planet and they're fully alien, and then
they're fine
rescue
again.
them. Yeah, then they're fine. They go down the planet, they become a salamander, they have babies, and then they're fine again.
I want to talk to you about these aliens because do they make any sense?
Not really, but that's quite often the case for TNG. There's not much of them.
No, there's not. I mean, we don't get any sense because they're immune to. I mean, they could be everywhere. They're immune to sensors and scanners. But no, we don't really understand their world because I don't know if it's the only way they reproduce, but that seems to be what they're saying is they take other bodies and they touch them and then suddenly they've got their DNA in them. But what if they're are they the only species on the planet? Do they do that to like the ants?
I assume there was another species on the planet, another humanoid species which died out because they were all being taken over by invisible aliens.
Fair enough.
The one thing I would say for them is that I did slightly enjoy a mental rewriting of the episode, is that the symptom that you first tell that you're infected with them is that your hands start to get the shakes like you got the DTs. So, just mentally rewriting the episode that everyone's a raging alcoholic on a come down just got me through a few scenes, I think. It's weird, isn't it? Because I'd say that something, not just TNG but Star Trek as a whole, is sometimes guilty of is having an alien race or some kind of adversary that is literally just that. If it wasn't a different alien, it would just be some bloke called Steve who is just there to fulfill a purpose rather than bringing some sort of concept at its heart. I mean, if you look at another show, look at Doctor Who, often the best monsters in Doctor Who are the ones that have some sort of core idea at their heart. You know, something like in the newer Who, the Weeping Angels or the Silence, some core idea that you can do something original with. And in theory, there is scope to do that with this alien. And they don't really. It's just sort of typical invasion of the body snatchers type thing, but with hands that get webbed again, like Riker a few episodes ago. They love the webbing of the hands. It's like the effect shop has gone, you know what we can do? Well, can you do this kind of special sort of hole in the chest? No, we can't do that, but I can web a bloody good hand. You want to flap a skin? I'm your man.
I think you're onto something there, because I think the best episodes are about something, always. Whether that is a metaphor or, you know, a proper character point, but most normally it has some kind of point to it, something that tells a story about our world today, you know, the classic Star Trek morality play, or just if it is actually something that has parallels with our modern world. This is just this is a science fiction idea, and that's fine, but it doesn't really feel like there's more to it. There is no depth. There is no great reading that you can do of this episode.
No, it's very much surface level. You're absolutely right. That's exactly the problem. And the surface level is fine. You know, it's a nice gloss, but there's nothing under the hood.
But it's frustrating when you're citing things like body snatchers, which absolutely are about something, you know, and they can be read in so many different ways. And yet this has that kind of idea, but none of the undercurrent at all.
Personally, I thought this was way ahead of its time in terms of being like modern events. You know, people with symptoms of some deadly ailment, hiding them. See? It's
conservatism.
We've skimmed the surface of this episode, and therefore we have covered it in as much depth as possible. Do you want to say some more behind the scenes stuff in Quickfire?
Christ no, but we've got a format to fill.
Well, let's go there then.
Quickfire.
Marina Sirtis, who plays Councillor Deanna Troi, in case you didn't know, does not appear in this episode, and I didn't notice that.
To be honest, when you've got somebody who's hiding something, it's not really good to have an empath around, is it? In an earlier draft, they had Leijten and Geordi in a relationship, or in romantically linked, but they cut that out because, dear God, we couldn't have that again.
And you know, I think it's refreshing to have a woman guest star and them not to become a love interest. That's good.
Yeah.
Michael Piller remarked, "It was a very complicated, complex production." Really? The director did a terrific job on it. Had scenes within scenes, and I was very happy with the show. It may not have been one of the best scripts we wrote, but it's a great example of how those guys in production can really turn out a hell of a product. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the production design is actually good on this. That's very nice.
Actually, I do want to highlight one thing. The backwards bit was done very well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It was just inconsequential to the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it's just a nice little effect. So the scene where LaForge uses the holodeck to investigate the awaiting recording was a homage to Blow Up, said Brannon Braga. You can see that, and I guess Blade Runner as well is also in that same trope genre.
So, turning as ever to the coma cornucopia that is the Nitpicker's Guide. Bearing in mind we've struggled to find anything to say, I'm in startling disbelief that Phil Farrand has found four pages to write on this subject. Not that any of them are interesting. Let's not get too excited or ahead of ourselves. But one bit I'd just like to highlight is in talking about plot oversights. He says, LaForge convinces Picard and Crusher to let him work alone by suggesting that they program the computer to monitor his movements. Presumably, somebody does this. However, after LaForge changes into the alien, Dr. Crusher tries to locate him, and the computer says that LaForge is not on the Enterprise. Open brackets, he really is, but the sensors can't find him. Close brackets. Just ignore that point for a minute. If the computer was programmed to monitor LaForge's movements, wouldn't it sound an alarm as soon as LaForge disappeared? Of course, if Picard had assigned data to LaForge, or the computer had sounded an alarm when LaForge disappeared, it would have been a short show. Yes, exactly. That's why it didn't happen.
It's almost like they wrote a script to fill a particular time.
I mean, I'm not sure if Phil is au fait with the construct of drama, but generally things happening is a sort of fairly fundamental part of a script.
Thank you once again for listening. Next time we will be back and talking about the nth degree. Until then, goodbye.
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 I hope Phil Farrand has something.
This better be gold.
You won't believe it. He's written 4 pages.
Really?
I know. I'm just blitzing through as quick as I can. Oh god, there's loads about Riker's headboard.
What?
Don't shine a UV light on that.
Oh no.